listening to the Mary Jane Society podcast, where you will meet entrepreneurs, cultivators, scientists, doctors, and inventors in the cannabis industry.
I'm your host, Pam Schmiel, a marketer and publicist in the cannabis industry. I can be reached at Pam at the Mary Jane Society podcast if you'd like to explore working together. Today our guest is Jamie Pearson. She's known for leading the West Coast-infused chocolate bar brand Bhang for 5 years as CEO. She's now the founder and CEO of the new Holland Group and has her eyes set on Europe. She's using her proven expertise to help others navigate global opportunities now that Germany has legalized cannabis. Jamie is a regular speaker at the Cannabis B2B conferences sweeping the EU as global entrepreneurs descend on Europe. She gives us insight into the discussions taking place there and where she is bullish on the EU cannabis industry. Let's welcome Jamie.
So if we could just start with overview of the new Holland Group and what your focus is on the EU for the company. And actually, who are you looking to work with? Just kind of start with that, and then we can jump into all the opportunities.
Okay, great. So New Holland Group is a group of cannabis consultants, or I would say experts, that I assembled because I get a lot of calls from people that are interested in basically what I did for Bhang when I was the CEO of Bhang, helping that brand cross state lines, cross country lines, not sacrifice quality, and then sort of always be top of mind. There's a skill and an art to it, especially when you've got a limited budget. So a lot of companies that are in the US that want to go to Europe and Europe coming to the US, or wanting to borrow on US experience, call me and say, do you know somebody in cultivation, or do you know somebody that can help me with my brand, with my marketing, or we've got this idea, can you help us bring it to life? And we would like this to be a global concept. So anytime somebody's trying to cross a border with any type of a project, I'm usually brought in at the strategy level so that they fundamentally create their business plan with the right steps in the right order and the right people in the right seats. That's really my specialty.
Yeah, and it's so nuanced. I mean, of course, in any business, but trying to figure out the right roadmap is it's a big jump to get someone like you. I understand the complete benefit of that. Yeah, for sure. So I know that, and then who are you interested in working with? I mean, I guess maybe that's just a big question, but who would be like ideal people that you would want to work with, or what sector of the industry and that you think is like low-hanging fruit and that you would just passionately want to be involved in?
It's a great question. I get asked this question all the time. The answer is that I like to work with, the executives and the C-suites of a company when they start considering international expansion, so that I can be the voice in the room that has been there, done that, and can help them avoid avoidable mistakes, which really saves a lot of money. And in the companies where I've done that work, it's more than paid for, what it costs to have the New Holland Group sit at the table, because we're more like a fractional CEO, CMO, and CFO all rolled into one, because we can tag team those divisions of labor with the experts that I have on my bench, and we can really bring a lot of value and a lot of savings. I think the biggest savings that companies experience when they hire us is they save the time that it takes to go from, should we be doing this or should we be doing that? And when I can weigh in on those conversations, they don't have to spend a lot of time and money figuring that out. I've done it so many times over the last 12 years. I know all the players. I know who's good. I know who's okay. I know who you should run in the other direction from and why. And I generally think everybody doing this work is doing something important, bringing plant-based medicine to the masses. And, just what's happened in the last 5 days has it's incredible.
Yeah.
So I'm quick to, I would say, give people their flowers, because I think everybody that's out here fighting the good fight, there is something of value, and I always try to figure out what that is with each individual person that I talk to, or each company that I deal with, so that I can, steer people in the right direction.
Right. And I know that, so to go on to Germany, I know, everybody in the US is probably around the world is so excited. I'm sure you've been hearing, that's all everybody's talking about. And it's kind of
Yeah.
like, back down, everybody, just hang out for a few minutes, But I just kind of want to get into that topic anyway, because people are thinking about it, and it might be like the long-term goal, but like, how is it really, my point is like, how is it shaping up? And I think everybody has kind of taken a step back now, but what about those early movers who want to get in and start getting their brands known, or start looking for building their brand awareness, or thinking about who are the partnerships, who can they partner with over there, what makes sense, and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I'm really thinking about in this conversation. And I guess, so you were just saying that it's been such an exciting 5 days. So what is your kind of just take on Germany, and what where you think that new step towards legalization really means for us?
Well, I think April 1st was the, um, you know, I'll go out on a limb and call it the tipping point. I think it was, and I was quoted in a couple of publications saying, I think it was the biggest domino that needed to fall for the rest of the governments of the world to sit up and take notice. You've got the fourth largest economy in the world that has socialized medicine, that is really putting themselves out there and saying, okay, enough's enough. It's time for us to really look at cannabis and plant medicine as not the alternative, but as the go-to, because it makes more sense for community wellness, for physical wellness, for mental wellness, all of the things. And as the Germans, figured this out through their medical program, what was going on, it was really the politicians saying, it's time. It's just time to stop the charade and allow our citizens to have access to this medicine. Well, when you're the fourth largest economy, and your politicians are examining this and coming to this conclusion, and you've got all of the countries around it, and part of the EU and the United States and South America and Asia, all of these places are making moves and starting to come to the same conclusion. You just need someone to start that snowball. We really needed one of the G7 countries. Canada is just too small, in the sense that it was a great domino to fall, and it was a great social experiment for us to all see what are some of the things that could happen. But when you take 85 million people or 90 million people in this size of, say, Oregon, and you've got all that compact humanity, and just across the way you've got the war in Ukraine, and you've got China and Russia, and all of the implications of what's happening globally, that was a big decision to be made at this juncture in time. I would not have been surprised if they had put it off for another year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But the fact that they went ahead and pulled the trigger is telling, and I think you're going to see a lot of dominoes falling because of it.
And are you also, I mean, I'm sure you're talking about the EU market, I know France is just about to go medical. I don't know, Spain, now I think there was a switch in government, that's talk about that might not go or whatever, but everybody has implemented some sort of program or decriminalization over there. So you're basically saying now that all those markets in the EU should probably start falling. And of course, we're waiting for the US, right? So you think that's what's going to happen?
I think, when you look at the Schengen countries, they don't have to cross a border. So it becomes really problematic if you're the French government, or you're the Spanish government, or any of the bordering countries. Plus you've got this pilot program going on in Switzerland, and you have a pilot program going on in Holland, and you've also decriminalized in all of these places. So you have cannabis being ubiquitous and very difficult to enforce as in an anti quote unquote drug policy, the German policy that just changed took cannabis in the medical sense off the narcotics list. The government that you're referring to in Spain that changed is the local government in Barcelona, where you have, over 250 smoking shops or private clubs. This model that was sort of always, ask but don't tell, look the other way. It's illegal here, but we're going to let this community thrive. And what ends up happening is the citizens who want cannabis are just going to cross the border. And then these countries are going to start seeing discretionary income crossing the border and staying in Germany. And that's not going to work long term. So
Right.
they're going to want to pull those dollars, or those euros back into their government coffers. And I think you'll start seeing things happen sooner than later. There are the politics of politics that are going to have to be muddled through, where you've got some, the conservative nationalistic parties that tend to be fear-based, going, no, we can't do that. And then you have, the policies of the parties that are saying, wait a minute, we've got to do what's in our citizens' best interest. We've got to let our people be self-determining about what they want to put in their bodies. There's all kinds of implications about what's happening, but make no mistake, even though the social club model that passed in Germany is for citizens only, it is going to open the floodgates of cannabis. It's going to be everywhere, and there's going to be a robust trade now that there's cannabis legal in everybody's hands that wants it in Germany. There's going to be cannabis everywhere, and we've just seen that everywhere in the US. That's just the way it works.
Right.
They talk about border towns. New Mexico went rec. The border towns, you've got cannabis all over the borders of Texas where it's not legal. We know this is what people are going to do. So stands to reasons it's going to happen here.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That makes sense completely. So what I'm kind of interested in and been watching, like the early movers over in Europe who are, the big companies like the Curaleafs and the Auroras and Tilrays and stuff, and they're building their infrastructure supply chain across borders right now, the Portugal and I forgot, they're different extraction and cultivation and some in Germany. So with the fractured laws in the EU, how is that how will that fit in at the end? I guess they're just working with the laws they are working with right now in each individual state. Is it a model that other people should, like bigger companies, should follow? Is that how the supply chain is going to run through the EU, I guess? Is it I'm just curious.
Well, there's the couple things that you need to consider, and one is if you're looking through an American lens and you are thinking about medical cannabis, you're immediately going to run into some things that don't hold true. In Europe, a medical program is not, in air quotes, a euphemism to get around the healthcare system or to get around the law. The medical programs in the EU are part of their healthcare system. You go to the doctor, you get a prescription, you go to the pharmacy, your health insurance may or may not pay for it, depending on whether or not your doctor was willing or not willing to fill out the reimbursement paperwork. But if you've got a doctor willing to do that and you do the hoop jumping, you will get your healthcare insurance reimbursement. So we don't have a model like that anywhere in the US because all of that is federally regulated. So there's similarities. We've seen the movie before of what it means that you can't cross borders. So in the US, and that was one of the things we did at Bhang, is we had, our chocolate products were in 7 different US states and and in Canada. And we had to have manufacturing figured out in each one of those locations. We had a manufacturing facility in Illinois and California and Nevada and Canada. And in any other industry, you have one manufacturing facility and you just figure out how to do the logistics of getting your product across, borders through transportation or through the mail. But in cannabis in the US, you can't cross the border. So, you're making these decisions about, am I going to buy 7 different machines? Am I going to have 7 different this? How am I going to make the packaging? to scale and you look the same everywhere, even though the rules are all different. You don't have those issues over here. First of all, because Germany's going rec now, and the way the rec model is working, there's not really a room for brands per se in that. Now there's workarounds, and I've got some clients that have already figured it out, and you're going to start seeing brands explode in Europe, but it's going to be done completely differently. But the supply chain piece really is existing at that medical level, and it's a pharmaceutical level. So you have to be EU GMP certified. So picture clean rooms and, negative air pressure, and you've got to walk through UV light with stick off mats and like straight up pharmaceutical manufacturing. There's nothing like that going on in the US. There are companies that manufacture to that level voluntarily, but not because it's required. So over here, when you're talking supply chain and you're talking that like Tilray and Curaleaf, that's really a medical program. And what you're going to see with the rec program is home grow is going to explode, because that's really the first thing that's going in Germany is the 3 plants per person per household. So if you got 4 people that want to grow cannabis in a house, you can have 12 plants right now. I think the home grow picks and shovels industry is where you're going to see the biggest growth. It's not going to be in brands quite yet.
Yeah, I just saw that I think it was Flora Growth. I think they're out of Canada. I think they mostly manufacture. I mean, they have products, but they're going into Germany with their home grow kits, right? Yeah. So to get their brand known. So maybe that's a way. I think that seemed clever because they are a brand company. And then right.
Well, and then seeds and clones will also be huge. Because people are they're going to need to get their hands on seeds to start from somewhere, or their hands on clones. So I do predict that you're going to see some robust movement in the seed and the clone areas of our industry: nutrients, lights, table, water systems, cocoa material, whatever all the things are, hydroponics, all the things. That's what you're going to see really explode. And, cannabis people are, I would say part of the reason I love being in the industry is they're clever, and there will be workarounds found. And I'm just excited to see what all the workarounds are. And, privy to a few already where people have said, well, this is the rule and it doesn't say that, so I'm going to do that. And
right. Because there's so many.
Yeah.
My mind thinks in the illegal terms. Does Germany allow, I mean, I know the end product is not really a brand now because it's going through pharmacies, but do they allow vertical integration for like if the cultivator is the distribution, but not really, right? Because there's no brands?
Well, you have to ask me that question and let me know, are you talking about in the pharmaceutical realm, in the medical side, or are you talking about in the new cooperative grow program?
Oh, yeah, right. Okay, the cooperative growth. Okay. I guess I'm thinking about what are the opportunities for someone who wants to come in. That was why I was asking the question. Like, if someone wants to come in and they're thinking, I want to do a vertically, integrated company, is there an opportunity for them to do that?
They would need to form a social club, and it's the same thing, but people get the wrong idea when they hear the social club model, because they think, oh, they're picturing like a bar where they're going to go be social, but it's really more a grow cooperative concept.
Right.
So
that kind of not really, and then they can't sell to outside. They can only sell or provide their with
each other's members, right?
Each other's members with 5 limit. Okay, so it's
not
really.
That's the rule at the cooperative side, at the actual organization side. But then you've also decriminalized cannabis. So what you're probably going to see are trade agreements where they're not selling things, but maybe they're trading. This social club is going to specialize in this strain or this product or this, form factor or whatever's allowed. And then you'll have the other club having something different. And believe me, if I've got cookies and gelato and you've got lemon haze, and I want lemon haze because I'm sick of cookies and gelato. Well, you and I are going to figure out
I
how
know,
I'm
I
going to
know,
get
I
what you
know,
got, and you're going to get what I got. And,
I
I mean,
know.
that's just natural. That's what's coming, you
That's
know?
what's coming. Right, right, right. Okay, yeah, okay. So, I don't know how much you want to give away, but I'm thinking also to go to tips on building a global brand, and then your experience from Bang and how you did that. And you're saying that, some companies are already figuring out how to get their brand introduced and start building their brand awareness. Because those are really the people, because you've already identified, all the cultivation grower stuff, that all those make sense they can easily come in now. But what about, I mean, we have some really innovative products, aside, I mean, gummies and that thing aside, like women's products. Look at these women's products coming out, right?
Right,
I mean, it's
right.
crazy. And just
Mhm.
like the different form factors, melting on your tongue, inhalation, we have a lot of stuff to offer Europe. And so where do you see the opportunity for them?
Well,
Like,
like I have a client that's a woman's product. It's called Hello Again.
oh,
And it's the vaginal suppositories that originally they designed them for women going through menopause. And then they came out with a formulation for people that just have period pain. And then they came out with an anal suppository that, has been huge in the gay community and also in the straight community for relief after anal sex or lubrication before anal sex. And it's the products are super popular. They're well formulated. Huge market for it. Obviously, 50% of the population. There's a way to get those products. Certainly in the UK right now, in Germany, in the medical market through maybe compound pharmacy and talking to doctors. But as far as getting a vaginal suppository into the rec market through the social club program, I don't see that happening anytime soon. So I think, what we really need to look at as American brands wanting to enter into Europe, if you're not one of the bigger players with stacks of cash, um, it might be better to sit back and wait and let other brands blaze the trail, pun intended.
mm,
But then,
mhm.
because first mover advantage sometimes is overhyped, especially in a brand new industry. So I think there's some wisdom in sitting back and being patient and waiting for things to unfold. And, but there is opportunity for sure in those medical areas, but maybe just where your branding has to be done differently. And you've got to be thinking about, um, Epidiolex, for example, is a brand. GW Pharmaceuticals manufactures it. It doesn't roll off the standard consumer's tongue, but believe me, if you've got a child with epilepsy, you know all about it. So there's some precision, um, I would say, hunting that you do for your client when you figure out who's going to be buying your brand. And so I think the brands that have legs that are going to be able to come over really soon probably still need to either be flower or more medical. Maybe a pre-roll brand would be good, but the branding piece is going to be tricky. So
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds.
I know. I'm kind of thinking that, well, this was another question is, do you think that brands in Europe or people in Europe would be interested in a licensing agreement, similar to what we do here, like you were saying, going state to state to say, okay, I'll find this great cultivator in Germany. I want to launch my pre-roll brand, or I mean, I know edibles aren't allowed yet, or what if, maybe it's on the medical side, the inhalation ones that are kind of you hear about, but not really, or the the little things you drop on your tongue that melt, like it just feels like so medical market, focus. So so back again, so do you think there might be licensing opportunities, or is there too much of a cultural difference? Are they even wanting like the American culture or the
I just
brand?
think it's early. I just think it's
Yeah.
too early right now.
Okay. It hasn't shaken out.
People, what I will say is people are absolutely, my phone's ringing off the hook. People want in. They want to explore it. They want to know what it is. We just have to be patient. It's just not, the market's not ready yet. I mean, a seed hasn't been planted in the rec program yet. So, we just got to let some of this stuff unfold.
What should brands consider when they're going into a different country or the EU?
Well, it's such an important point and an important question. The one thing I tell my clients is, don't assume that because you've had tremendous success in California that you're going to come over and crush Germany or crush France or crush Spain. They are so culturally different, and within each of those countries there's different regions. So think about, like, in California, having a brand in Sacramento or San Francisco or Los Angeles, those are three very different markets. So now you're going to be in Germany and you're going to have a brand in Munich or a brand in Berlin or a brand in Cologne. Those are three entirely different markets. So there are things that will be similar or that will resonate across those three places. But if you come in and know everything, and don't account for the fact there's going to be expertise in Germany about German culture and how you need to speak to the Germans, you're going to be making a big mistake. So I think the main thing is you need to have people that understand cannabis, that understand the cannabis history of that locality, and make sure that you're with them so that you don't step on avoidable landmines.
Yeah.
I always think about the famous thing when you're an American, you spend a lot of time in Germany, you hear about President Kennedy coming over and saying, "I am a Berliner."
Oh, yeah.
And in Germany, a Berliner is a jelly donut. So the Germans go,
yeah.
ha, ha, the US president thinks he's a jelly donut. You just don't want to do stuff like that when you come over.
Right.
So,
Right. So yeah, just have to really make sure. So what about the as far as R&D and doctor acceptance, education, clinical trials, like how is that whole medical world embracing it? I mean, we need them. We need that behind us to move along.
So I think the most exciting thing about the law that's being kind of overlooked, I think some of the people are talking about it, but what's super exciting is that cannabis was taken off the narcotics list as part of this law change in Germany, which is going to make research and prescriptions and it's just going to loosen everybody's ability to work with cannabis across the medical board, which is amazing because right now what we've got is it was a narcotic. And so it was so tightly controlled that it was difficult to get into people's hands. So now I think you're going to be able to start seeing cannabis being prescribed a lot more by doctors. There's also just a lot more comfort because it's been medically legal for a number of years in Europe and in Germany. And as doctors have more and more anecdotal information that they're sharing at conferences and with each other, you're starting to see the stigma around plant medicine usage dissolve. And that's been really popular. And it's part of what contributed to the politicians' ability to change that law.
Right. And what about the roles of pharmacists? I mean, so they're getting the doctor's order and they have to fulfill it. I mean, so they basically have, I'm just thinking 5 extraction possibilities where it's a 2-to-1 CBD, THC, 5 milligram, whatever. I mean, it's coming in just basically labeled like that, or and they have to know about what they're doing. They have to understand different extraction methods to be able to talk to their customer.
Yeah, the pharmacists that exist right now that are dispensing cannabis, a lot of them were being ridiculed and criticized. Not all by all people, but also, it's just the beginning of any industry because there's so much stigma around cannabis. But what we're seeing now is a lot of curiosity. People want to they want to try it. They want to see if it's going to give them relief. Is it going to help me sleep? Is it going to help me with my pain? And then as it becomes more ubiquitous in conversation, then you start seeing it articles in the little magazines where you get your TV schedule and different places because it's just everywhere now. It's infiltrating all the conversations. So what's happening is these pharmacists that started off are now the source of expertise and information because they've been there, done that. And then you're going to start to see more people wade into the environment. What I think though is that people also need to understand not to look through their North American lens at the pharmaceutical distribution system here, the pharmacy system, because the CVS Walgreens model that we have in the US is not what they have here. There is an element of that where you've got these little markets that sell nutraceuticals and pharmaceuticals and cosmetics, kind of like you would see a CVS do, where they've got the dispensing area in the back of the store. The German Apotheker is what they're called. Those pharmacists have different levels of schooling. So if they're just a basic pharmacist, they can count pills. But then there's the compounding pharmacy, which we have in the US as well, and it's a completely separate business. There are some large chains in Germany where the pharmacist does both, where they actually compound the medicine or they create the medicine on site. So there's an element of manufacturing in pharmaceuticals in Germany that we don't really have in the US, except in those strict compounding pharmacy situations. So I think though what happens at the compounding pharmacy level is if a doctor prescribes it, it's automatically allowed, the way the old medical law worked. So that's one area of the law that I need to figure out. I haven't digested all of the 100 pages that's come through yet, but that's one of the areas where I am also curious to see how it's going to impact pharmacies.
Right, because if they're making it,
Right.
what does all that mean? Yeah, okay. I heard
What I can tell you is they have to get EU GMP certified pharmaceutical ingredients. So the API, the active pharmaceutical ingredient, if it's cannabis, it has to come out of an EU GMP certified lab. So there aren't a lot of places, well, I would say there are a lot of places, but there aren't a lot of places where those pharmacies can get that product. That's going to proliferate. That's going to be amazing.
And then just kind of winding down, what is the investment appetite, with venture capitalists there? I mean, I know here we're waiting for rescheduling to happen, federal legalization for institutional, but at the very least rescheduling. How does it stand there? Because I mean, everyone's so excited. You would think investors are really looking at the market, but probably afraid too to take the steps.
Well, it's an interesting conundrum because the typical investment appetite, they're looking to the institutional investors to see what kind of an appetite they have. Well, they're not really going to jump into this. And what I'm seeing right now is that those social club model isn't a recipe for 10xing your money. So because it's such a small model by nature. So right now, I think the institutional investment money is waiting to see what happens with the pilot program that starts, which I think that's step 2. And that's really when the exciting commercialization of cannabis is going to happen. And then we're going to start seeing what institutional capital believes about cannabis. It's also going to I think they're also going to give the industry an opportunity to develop a little bit, and nobody's really whetting their appetite. I'm not seeing any institutional investors jump out of the woodwork right now, but I do think that there's investment interest. Lots of people want to invest and they're looking for places to invest. And by and large, what they're finding is this isn't, unless you're investing in companies that sell picks and shovels, so to speak. And that's really where I would be looking. I would be looking at media companies. I would be looking at, lighting companies, any nutrients, any of those types of companies, seed companies, because that's really where the initial explosion is going to happen.
Because I know that you're going to be attending the Berlin Summit for ICBC, and you're on the panel there as well. So I guess that's basically, and I know you've been over there in all the events and everything. So I guess that's the mood that you're talking about. I guess similar to here too. It all makes sense. It's kind of we kind of know what's going on. So where are you really? Like to end this off, like what are you really excited about in the EU market? What are you bullish on? I guess maybe I know you've said a lot about it, but just,
Yeah.
I do understand what you're saying. I'm just curious if there's maybe one little thing that you want to.
Well, I definitely think there needs to be a lot more education. So I think companies like Leafly are going to be exciting to watch to see, are they going to enter the Europe market? If so, if not, who's going to step in, because that's definitely a need. The seed companies, the grow equipment companies, starting out of the gate, and then also packaging, branding. There's going to be a lot of need for cultivation help. I'm just excited to see it all unfold, and see who the players are that come out of the woodwork and become, the Google Facebooks of German cannabis.
Yeah, yeah. And then just one last thing I forgot. I just wanted to, as far as cultivators, do you think there's a danger for anyone to invest in cultivation, say even in Germany, because of the fear, like we are in the United States, that once everything becomes federally legal and we can start accepting imports from Colombia, say, is that a real threat to people trying to, jump into the cultivation game, or it's just there's so much runway that we don't have to worry about it yet, kind of maybe? Yeah.
Well, I think if you're going to be in the cultivation game, what you need to understand is that as these more mature markets, like Canada, like Colombia, come online and get more and more nuanced and efficient, the price per gram that it costs them to grow is so low that it really is going to be hard to compete unless you're doing something exotic or something, special. But I think you're gonna, it's just like anything else. When M&Ms are not, they're made with sugar, but that sugar is not grown in sugarcane in warehouses, right? Where the places where sugarcane grows the cheapest is where the sugar is produced, and that's what's going into the end product. And so we really, from a cultivation standpoint, I think about cannabis as a commodity, and it's an input, it's an ingredient, and it's a final product, and it's a CPG. So you have to ask yourself, am I growing cannabis to be an input? Am I growing it to be an end product? And then you got to figure out what your market space is. And yeah, you definitely need to be thinking about what your price per gram is going to be, because energy in Europe is very expensive in comparison with energy in South America. Labor in Europe is very expensive. Now you can get into the Eastern Bloc countries, you can get into the Southern countries in Greece, Macedonia. That's where a lot of cultivation is happening right now. And it makes sense. It's where they've got plentiful sunshine and cheaper labor. And those are areas where you're going to see cannabis grown as inputs. But as far as that top shelf, the big, beautiful, frosty buds, I think you're still going to see a lot of that coming out of greenhouses and light depths. And so then it just really boils down to the price per gram to produce. And, I think we all know who's doing all of that in Europe with tomatoes and cucumbers and, and wine grapes. It all stands to reason, right?
Yeah, and I think there's also a real place in the space for cultivators, the craft growers, because I think in the end, when we get to precision medicine, that we are going to need, precision, like we need, this plant to have, lemon hay, limonene or whatever, and it's going to be all that kind of stuff that we need for precision medicine. So I guess maybe there'll be a place for both people. But anyway,
Oh, there are for sure. The strains and the pheno hunting and the know-how to get the terpene profiles and
yes.
To get what you need, the different cannabinoid compounds. So huge explosion of THCV products in the US right now. And I love the THCV products myself. I use them a lot. And I don't know what's going to happen with THCV in Europe. Are they going to lag, 5-6 years behind? Or is it just going to become truly a global industry where we're all getting the same products at the same time? We're going to get there eventually, but
Yeah.
how we get there is the question, right?
Yeah, very exciting.